And this is going to take a bit of time. I'm going to speak at a fairly high level, but I think you're entitled to a fairly full report of what happened. Okay, come on. Okay. So, just as a reminder, a number of years ago, things here weren't so great. This is a picture of our front doors, which 3 years ago you couldn't use except in an emergency because they were about to fall apart, and a good kick would have knocked them in. Well, now they've been repaired. They're in great shape. They've been painted bright new colors that pick up the colors in the stained glass windows, and we can use them again. Here's a picture of, the side of the bell tower with some louvers there. They're in kind of sorry shape, and you can see peeling paint on the molding and the supports under them. I guess those are the corbels are not in great shape. This is a picture of the repaired and repainted louvers during the middle of the job. They look much nicer now. There were cracks in the side of the building. That is not good for the long-term integrity of the church. And here's the middle of the construction process where those things were ground out and repaired and repainted. There were some sorry issues with flashing. This is flashing under one of our stained glass windows. That is not good for the integrity of the window. And so during the process, we took out the stained glass windows, reset them in frames, repaired the woodwork and the flashing so that our windows can last for another 100 years. There's dry rot under the gutters, under the eaves. They found a lot more than we first expected. And that was all repaired. And they managed to save enough money in the construction that we could use copper flashing in gutters, which should last for 100 years instead of however many aluminum lasts. And finally, the reason we had to do this capital campaign was the roof was falling apart. Every year it leaked, tiles would blow off. But it's a tough job. We don't have a nice flat roof. We have a curvy roof with difficult things to access. And this shows the workmen putting shingles on the dome. We've installed a 50-year roof, so hopefully we won't do it again within my lifetime, because I'm not going to be here in 50 years. It's a Class A fire-rated roof, so it's as good as you can get. So let me walk through how we got here. In some sense, this all started almost 10 years ago when Bob Howd and I met to explore replacing the sanctuary lights and installing a video system. Our original lights, these are the lights that are under the dome and reflect off the ceiling to light the sanctuary, had gotten quite dim, and it was very hard to even read hymnals in the sanctuary. It's bright now. Well, it was pretty bad. People with older eyes like me were having trouble reading. As far as video, this is before Zoom and all these things, we had made a trip to a UU church in Reno where they had a beautiful video system, and they showed slides and movies and for every service, and they said, we're in Silicon Valley, we should be able to do that. And Bob and I looked into it. We talked to a couple contractors. We tried to get them to do both jobs together, which was a mistake because we thought we'd have to put up scaffolding. And unfortunately, nothing came of it, and Bob died 2 years later, and he's greatly missed. But in April 2020, Reverend Nancy Palmer Jones, we realized the roof was a problem each year, but she walked through the church with new eyes and realized, the inside is kind of shabby. You forget that when you're accustomed to a place and you forgive it. It sins, but visitors don't. And our rental agent had told us that the bad condition of the walls, the bathrooms, bathrooms are the second things anybody ever looks at, were discouraging renters. And we realized that we needed to have a capital campaign, and she talked me into it because I figure if I don't do it, I'm not sure anybody else will, and it needs to be done. So I agreed to do it, and I managed to convince Sue Perlmutter and Nancy Coleman to be co-chairs. And now I didn't want to, we had a bit of money saved up, not enough to do the whole campaign, but I think we have enough to do these dome lights. So I interviewed some dome lighting contractors. We picked one that had a very good design, the one we used, and signed a contract in October. Well, the lights didn't go in until next June. The reason was we were in the middle of the COVID epidemic, and San Jose Planning Department was practically shut down. So what would have taken 1 week at the counter took 6 months to get the permits. But finally, we got the new lights in just before the church reopened after the COVID thing. So I wanted to make sure that if we went into a capital campaign, we had something to show people, if you give us money, this is what we can do. And so that was our first sample of what you could do. So we realized the co-chairs realized, none of us has ever done a capital campaign before. I mean, almost never does anybody do one twice because they're far enough between that people either die off or they're burned out. And so we hired a consultant, Kay Kreider from Stewardship for Us. Stewardship for Us works mainly with UU churches to help them with their fundraising, both annual and special campaigns. And that was invaluable. Without her, we wouldn't have the nerve to raise enough money. We were thinking, well, maybe we can do $500,000. $500,000. And no, she said, shoot much higher. Shoot for 5 times your annual budget. And we never would have the nerve to do that, but that's why you need professionals involved. We started to get some early estimates. Now, the problem with early estimates is nobody is going to do a serious bid job before you got the money. And so they're not accurate. Garden City, who eventually did the work, estimated the roof would be, $430,000. Well, it ended up almost 2.5 times that much. But as Kay pointed out, this is absolutely normal with capital campaigns. You have to approach it incrementally and make adjustments as you go. So don't panic. It happens in 90% of the cases that the costs are higher than the original costs. So Kay interviewed the congregation of the year. She talked to different committees about what we needed, talked to the members, and finally in October had what they called a financial review to establish how much we could expect to raise from our congregation, and have a reasonable chance of making it. And as I say, without that, we never could have done it. Well, okay, let's go to the middle stage. In January, 4 years ago, we started the pledge drive in conjunction with the annual giving pledge, and we raised $1.5 million, which was about 4.5 times our annual budget. So that was pretty respectable. We were happy. And all during the year 2020, we investigated projects we wanted to carry out and how much they would cost. Now, we did get one early job done. Sue Perlmutter and Patrick Canange pretty much single-handedly renovated the youth room, which was if you remember, it was in pretty sorry shape. It was not a place you'd want to visit. They basically ripped out the old carpeting, threw away the old furniture, put in a new hardwood floor. You don't want permanent carpeting in a kid's room. Got throw rugs, new furniture, new sturdy, but not too expensive furniture, but not IKEA stuff. They were trying to make sure it lasts, and painted it bright colors chosen by the kids. I'm told that Reverend Matthew is not too keen on those colors, but if you empower the kids, sometimes you get aesthetic decisions you might disagree with. But the youth room, it was the best room in the church. For renters, that's a room they often use for wedding preparation and things. We use it for meetings. So that was a sample of what the whole church could look like if people contributed. Well, we found out that no contractor was going to give us a fixed bid contract on the church without knowing what was wrong, including searching for things like rotten wood. So we spent the first third of 2023, Garden City Construction performed a detailed inspection of the building. They went up on ladders. They sent drones around the tower where it's hard to reach. And they found a lot of rotten wood and other problems. And they kept track of it, so when the project actually started, you know what needed to be fixed. And then finally, in July of that year, they gave us a bid. And it came in much higher than we expected. It was, $1.7, $1.8 million, and we'd only raised 1.5. And pretty much all the leadership went into funk. And I got to thank Jan Tice-Guffey for saying, well, let's have a second pledge drive to raise some more money. And so we did that. We had a blitz pledge drive in October that raised another $400,000 in extra pledges. So that was enough to do the project, to start the project. So thank you, Jan, for pushing us to do that. Now, I want to also thank Lois Smallwood for a suggestion she made that year. We had a lot of money in the bank because the money was coming in, and we weren't ready to start construction yet. Well, you can't start construction until you have enough money to finish it, too. So, but we had, over $1 million in the bank, earning about 0.05%. And she said, why don't we look into treasury bills? And treasury bills at that time were paying 5% a year, which on $1 million is a lot of money each year. And they're absolutely zero risk. Treasury bills are less risk than putting your money in the bank because the banks can go bankrupt. And, well, we didn't have the current administration, but in any case, no. The bankers will not let that happen, no matter who's in charge. So I thank that. We eventually raised over $160,000 in interest. So that, we couldn't have finished it without that. Well, the major construction started 2 years ago. They kind of dragged their feet in the early half of the year doing other projects, but finally got to us in June. And they pretty much, the second half of 2024 was the major outside construction. If you remember, they built a scaffolding all up the walls, all over the domes, in places that I wouldn't walk, I'll tell you that, but they would, and put a large wooden barrier around the outside so nobody climbs up and sues us. And so they spent, about 7 months, basically replacing the roof, repairing the wood, fixing the stained glass windows, putting on new flashing and everything. And the people that supervised that were Sue Perlmutter and Patrick Canange. They spent a lot of time on that. And Sue made a lot of made most of the design decisions about, what colors we're going to use, what kind of tiles, and so they spent a lot of work on that. So last year, they were done with the outside. It's time to work on the inside, and Garden City was going to handle the sanctuary, but they sort of said, we've lost energy, we can't do the other inside work. So we hired an interior, and we realized that nobody on the building committee knew much about interior design, and even our aesthetics committee, making a detailed plan for bathrooms and things like that is too much. And we wanted to make sure that, our rental consultant and everybody had a product that people would love. So we hired an interior designer, Vivian Soleimani, who had worked with me before, and she was very good. And she actually saved us more than her fee with recommendations on the existing project of things we didn't need to do to meet code because we met code in some other way. She told us, no, you got to replace those carpets on the stairs that we weren't planning because if you don't, you'll be sorry, and we would have been sorry. Encourage us to make sure the flooring in the different room matches. You're not trying for, a variety. You want harmony. She gave us a plan for the various interior spaces. By that I mean bathrooms, the hallways, entryways, and stairways, and things like that. And so Garden City, we had to wait to receive the new carpets and the chairs before they could start work. But they finally started work in the summer of 2025, which was after Third Street had shut down for the year. Fortunately or unfortunately, we didn't have to rush to finish it because they shut down, hopefully temporarily, that fall. But I don't know if you remember or not, but the church was shut for a couple of weeks when they were working on the sanctuary. But basically, they ripped out all the carpeting here and on the balcony, disassembled the chairs and moved the best ones upstairs to the balcony because the ones down were better than the ones out. Saved all the donation plaques, put down new carpet, reinstalled the chairs upstairs and downstairs. The labyrinth came a bit later, so there was a hole in the middle, but it fit right in since it's made of carpet tiles. And they also replaced all the other flooring basically all of the flooring in the main floor and the second floor was replaced. We put the same carpeting in the fireside room because Vivian said you want it to match. And we made sure that the carpeting matched the chairs. We put hard flooring in the back hall and in the narthex and the library. And Garden City completely refinished Hattie Porter Hall floor, which had been patched up before but still looked a little shabby. They did a beautiful job. And it looks great. Starting in August, Orlando Construction, they're the contractor that worked with Vivian, renovated the interior space, which includes complete renovation of the upstairs bathroom, ripped everything out, including the flooring, and rebuilt it. Major renovations on the downstairs bathrooms, including new counters and sinks, new lighting, which was in pretty bad shape, especially in the women's room, new mirrors, and we also installed baby changing tables in all 3 bathrooms. So that was a sore point. And they also painted the entryways, painted the stairways, refinished the tables out in front there, and we threw away the tablecloths that were on them because she said, let people see your wood. Don't cover it up with a tablecloth. And built a hanging table in the back. So by the end of last year, the construction was mostly done. Now I want to give a shout out to Sundar Mudapalli for installing a smart door timer and control that he and I had designed to remove the security problem of people not locking the side door when they leave. Now it's on a timer, so even if you forget, eventually it's going to lock. And that was good. And also Sundar, he did something else. We found that when he put the new the floor in Hattie Porter Hall, it's softwood. It's not hardwood. It gouges easily, and the chair dollies had kind of small wood wheels, and he got larger wheels, worked with a friend that was a welder to put much bigger casters on those things so we wouldn't wreck there. So thank you, Sundar, for doing that. You can do a lot of work and you can wreck it if you're not careful. So let's look at the late stages where we are now. In October, Monty installed an off-the-shelf 95-inch monitor in that niche. In January, we had an Action Sunday to plant native plants in the front and on the side. We have new curtains, which will be installed as soon as the contractor can fit it on a schedule. They're sitting in my son's bedroom right now at home, but we've got them. And so they're going to replace the old curtains, which you could probably shred. They're so old, and they'll look a lot nicer. Now, the fourth line wasn't on my slides a week ago. This last week, on Monday, we found that the fire alarm system had failed. And wasn't really repairable because the stuff is all out of date. And Sue Perlmutter got on the phone interviewed several contractors and found a couple of them. We went to the board on Thursday and got more money for this because there wasn't enough left in the budget. We picked one on Friday and sent the contract to Rom to be signed. So hopefully repairs, a temporary repair will be this week and permanent repairs once we get permits. So that wasn't expected, but these things happen. Even when the projects are done, things can fail. And finally, the last piece of the project, and dear to my heart, because it's the thing that kind of started my involvement in this whole thing 10 years ago, we're going to get a large multi-panel 160-inch video screen up there replacing that projector. It will have the same quality as that one, but the same size as that one, so people like me with weak eyes can read it. It'll finally make us look like a 21st century Silicon Valley church. So that's dependent on when Monty picks the final contractor to do it, and we can arrange the details. But I think that'll make it look great. So let's work through the expenditures. What did we spend? Now, I'm going to caution you. The totals are correct, but the individual breakdown into lines is somewhat of a guess. If you've ever done construction on your house, you realize that they don't give you the bill by room. They give you a bill by different categories of work. Even the original quote, it's not like buying something from Amazon. They give you a quote for the whole job, and they may save money by doing it all together. So it's a bit of a guess. I tried to assign things reasonable way and assign the overhead, but some of these items can be off by tens of thousands of dollars. But the total is correct, and the breakdown is approximately correct. Well, the dome lighting, that is accurate. That cost $83,000, and I was able to do that with the money we already had for construction, and that pretty much used it all up. So that was all we could do. The fundraising itself by Kay Kreider was $12,000, well worth it. We never could have done this without her. The inspection that took several months with all the drones and things was $83,000. The biggest expense in all this thing was the exterior building. And at first I was trying to break it down by roof painting, but I realized that wasn't possible because this stuff is all mixed together so much. And like there's a scaffolding. Is that for the painting? Is that for the roof? It's for everything. So for the exterior building, it was $1,622,000. And that includes replacing the roof, repairing all the bad woodwork, taking the stained glass windows out and resetting them in new frames, replacing the flashing and the gutters and the downspouts, let's see, I think I'm forgetting one or two other things, but basically the entire building, the outside, and well, of course, fixing the stucco and painting the building, which had not been painted in the last renovation 25 years ago. So it's 40, 50 years old before it was painted. And we painted it, I think, nicer colors. Some people may disagree, but we think the church looks sharper now than it did. Now, when we were about to do the roof, our boiler was on its last legs. Now, if you live in a house, you may think it's strange that the boiler's on the roof, but that's very normal for commercial buildings, that they put the boiler on the roof. And by doing it at this time, any damage we did to the roof and replacing it was going to be repaired anyway. And plus, it needed to be done, and they had cranes there to get things up on the roof. So that was an unexpected expense, but it needed to be done. Now, what I'm calling surrounds is everything outside the building, beyond the building itself. So that includes fencing around the whole building. For a number of years, we were worried about security, and now we've got much better fences all the way around. A big chain link fence in the back. We've raised the fences by the side and put these decorative fleur-de-lis on top whose purpose is not be decorative, but discourage people from climbing over them. We fenced in the water supply in front where people would come and homeless people would come and take the water and shut it off in the building. We fenced in the garbage cans. We enhanced the gate shared with Corinthian Club and put a closer on it so they wouldn't leave it open. Surrounds also includes the concrete work, the front steps, railings, drainage, and that kind of stuff. And that was $123,000. The front doors, including repairing the doors, completely rebuilding the steel frames around them, which were bent, and replacing locks and fixing some other doors, was $73,000. But these are the original doors from 125 years ago, so we don't want to lose them. The flooring inside, as I say, we did all the flooring on the first and second floors. It was $190,000. As I said, at first we weren't going to do the stairways, and Vivian said, no, you got to do those stairways. And you got to do it all at once, too, because if you don't, it won't match. It won't look right. And now it does match. The seating includes the cost of the new chairs, but also the cost of removing the old chairs, installing the good ones upstairs, and that was $55,000. And that's why we had to shut the church for 2 weeks, because, everything was disassembled for that period of time. The interior spaces, what I mentioned, the upstairs and downstairs bathrooms, the front hall, the back hall, the library, painting the stairways. At first we weren't going to paint the narthex, and we looked at everything else and said, nope, add that to the list because it'll stand out like a sore thumb if we don't paint it. And that's the first thing people see. That was $200,000. The AV system, which Monty has built up from nothing since the COVID days, includes new computer to run the system, new microphones, new speakers, new amps, new assisted listening devices, which are much better than the old ones, I'm told. The screen up there, we've installed a permanent audio system in Hattie Porter Hall so that us and renters don't have to truck stuff in all the time. And we'll also include that screen and that one eventually. Should be about $43,000. It might vary a little because we don't have the final figure. And the fire alarm system should be about $50,000. Again, that's not final, but that should cover what we need to do. So the total expenditure is $2,635,000. That's a lot of money, and more than we expected at the beginning. Well, let's see where we got the money. Here's the funding sources. We had $60,000 in the building improvement fund when we started, and that's what I used to do the dome lights, plus a little more we took from other funds. In donations, we got $1,850,000 out of $1,900,000 in pledges. So that's over 97% fulfillment rate, which is great for any church or nonprofit. You guys have been great. We got a lot of money out of yearly budget surpluses. Now, what is that? That's money that's left over, in the black at the end of the fiscal year. And we don't automatically roll it off. It goes to where the board puts it. And the board agreed that during the course of this project, any yearly surpluses would go to the capital campaign. Now, why is it so big? Well, there's 2 years where we had very large surpluses. The first year of COVID, everybody panicked and said, oh, well, our donation is going to crash. People are not going to pay their pledges. Nancy organized an extra pledge drive, and people did pay their pledges. 95%, 96% payment rate. Now, the fear was not unwarranted. In many UU churches and other churches, they had great financial problems during this time. So this congregation is outstanding in actually paying pledges. And that's a credit. Because many churches did have problems. We didn't, so we ended up with a lot more money than we expected, which ended up here. And if you remember, a few years ago, our RE director, Joel, resigned right before the start of the church year. And we didn't fill that position for over a year. And so we had a large surplus because of that, because it was already baked into the budget. As I mentioned, interest and treasury bills, $166,000. Well, we couldn't have done it without that. When we found how much everything was going to be, we went to the board and said, you know, we really need to raid the endowment fund, which had about $130,000 in it, nowhere near enough to actually use as an endowment. You pretty much need $1 million before you can start withdrawing the income. And we said, the endowment fund allows it to be used for capital construction purposes, and if we don't do it now, it won't get done, because things are a lot easier to do when you're doing other work than to just do on the scratch. So we pretty much cleaned that out, left $10,000 in place just so we wouldn't have to close it out. Benevity matching, what's that? Well, a number of corporations in the area, including Apple, Adobe, and Google, will match charitable pledges. And the company called Benevity is the processor for that, so it comes through them. And these companies set the rule that matching pledges cannot be used for religious purposes, which pretty much is all of our annual budget. You know, there's no way you can justify salaries of anybody as not being religious. And, you know, the program work, all our program work, you know, we could give it away. We give some away to PACT, but we didn't want to lose all that money, so I sent them an email 5-6 years ago saying, well, you know, we can't spend it on religious purposes. Could we spend it on the building? And I thought they'd say no, but instead they said, yeah, that's okay. So I saved that email away, did not press the point. I didn't want them to think it over too much. And we've been spending it on the building ever since. And that's $100,000. That's good to have. But, yeah, no, I got that email saved away. I'm not going to ask them twice. They might change their mind. We had a bequest from Libby Codd, and she didn't specify where it was to go. And the board agreed this should go to the capital construction. Now, during the second year of COVID, you know, Biden's first year, they set up a thing called the PPP. I forget what it stands for, but it was basically money to businesses and other organizations to help them survive. And we applied for it and got $40,000. And because of that surplus we had, because people paid their pledges, we only spent about $12,000 of it. So the $28,000 was left, we put in the capital campaign. The Labyrinth Fund, Patrick Smiley has been leading people, you know, through the labyrinth ever since the last one was put in over 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago. And the collections went into a thing called the Labyrinth Fund, which was to help replace the labyrinth. Well, we replaced the labyrinth. So we cashed that out, and Patrick and I agreed we're going to close out that fund, and any future donations will just go to the general fund. Because I'm hoping not to have to replace it again in the next 25 years, and after that, I'm not going to be here. So, well, that was it until last week when this fire alarm system failed, and as Sue pointed out, if we don't fix it, we're out of compliance. And we'd have to station somebody here 24 hours a day, $30,000 a month. So that had to get fixed. And so we raided a couple other funds. When we were hiring our new minister, we set up something called the Minister Transition Fund to cover transition expenses, like their moving expenses and other setup things. We put $40,000 in it. Now, it was money that would have otherwise gone to the capital campaign. But it was still sitting there, and I'm sorry I told Matthew, well, maybe we could apply it to some other purpose, but we stole it to save the building from fire. And I'm sorry I told him that, but we needed to do it. So we took $25,000. And we have money in the building maintenance fund, which is normally used to fix smaller failures during the year. That's maybe larger than a small failure, but the board made that available if we need it for overruns. I think we won't, because this total is, this total is less than this one. So hopefully we'll have money left over and won't have to take that fund out. But so we finished, we pretty much finished everything we planned to do except air conditioning. And let me give you the bad news. We're never going to get air conditioning because it costs $500,000, and we'll probably increase our operating costs by, who knows, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year for electricity. So if you've got $1 million you want to give us, we can get air conditioning. But other than that, we got everything else in. So I'm pretty pleased the way it came out. And many things came out better than we expected. For example, by the delays in doing this and all the experience with the Monty system, we have a much better video system than we would have got if we had got it 10 years ago. Let me just mention the contractors we work with, because I think they deserve some credit. New Age Electric put in the dome lights. They were wonderful to work with. We had a failure a couple of years later. They came back, fixed it at very low cost and very little trouble. So I'm very happy with them. Kay Kreider, our fundraising consultant, we couldn't have done otherwise. Now, among the biggest credit has to be to Garden City Construction. Jim Salat is the owner. They're basically the only contracting firm in San Jose that can deal with historic buildings, because that's a specialty, and you got to have a little love in your heart to do that, because I'm not sure it's so profitable, but I guess Jim's got that love. And they did all the major construction outside and all the work in the sanctuary. We're very happy with them. And I think he told me when I gave him the final check that they were happy with us too. So I think it's a good relationship. Vivian Soleimani was our interior design consultant, and I'm happy with those results. And Orlando Construction was the people that actually did it. And they still got to hang the curtains. And added to the list, Howell Electric, which is going to replace our fire alarm system. So let me thank the volunteers that were certainly most involved in the job. First of all, we had a number of fundraising stewards to help Reverend Nance and me with the original fundraising. And it's too long to list. I'm not sure. I never throw anything away, so I got it somewhere, but it doesn't mean I can find it. But thank you if you were a steward for doing that. Sue Pellmulder basically did most of the construction planning for the work with Garden City Construction, including choosing materials for the roof, the carpet, the chairs, the floors. And Patrick Canonge was a liaison with our foreman. He spent a lot of time here, on a weekly or even multi-weekly, several times a week basis when they were doing the work, because there was a lot of interaction needed. If you've done construction, you know that you need to stay involved if you want the work to come out the way you want it. Otherwise, they'll do it. They'll do it in a reasonable way, but maybe not the way you want it. I want to thank Nancy Coleman for being one of the original co-chairs and helping with the planning and fundraising. Monty Lowe, who can say enough for Monty? I mean, he built this wonderful tech system from scratch. There's a gory level of detail with photos about how to run it. We wouldn't have such a great system if it weren't for Monty. So thank you, Monty. Oh, no. We had help from other people. Sue, if you may not know, in her former life was a professional sound engineer. Other people are doing it, but I'm nagging to Monty. We need to get those quotes for the big screen. But thank you, Monty. Sundar was sort of a jack of all trades. He modified the doors in the office area so that it was more secure. Installed these smart door electronics, modified the chair trolley. And I'd like to thank our aesthetics committee, Joyce Miller, Madeline Morrow, and Jean Corneliuson. And there may be other people on here. If you helped out and I left off your name, I'm sorry, but I did do well, yeah. So Okay, so I was hoping to say we're done, but we're almost done, except for 3 projects. So thank you to the congregation for financially supporting this major renovation of our historic building. It was a lot of money. We spent 6 years of annual income on this project. That's a lot of money and a lot of deep pockets. And thank you for fulfilling your pledges. You know, as I say, not every congregation can count on people to make their pledges. So thank you to the congregation for the job you did and for your support. Thank you to all the people who helped with the fundraising and construction process, of which I've named some and probably others that got left off. So what you've done is you've planted trees and dug wells for future generations, and literally 1 tree right by the street there next to the sidewalk. So wells, I don't think we're going to dig any actual wells, but thank you for spending it forward. All right, sure. There we go. Okay. So, yeah, and I think, I don't think I'll take questions because this has run long enough, but you can talk to me offline if you've got questions. But we want to find out who got elected. Thank you.
So I'm very pleased to report that all of the 10 candidates were elected to their positions. We had 58 people participating either today or by absentee ballot or on Zoom. And so thanks to everybody for your participation, and congratulations to the new officers and their elected positions. Let's give them a hand of applause. Yeah.
Thank you, Connie and Inez and the nominating committee for running these elections. We really appreciate it. So now we're going to open it up to any new business. So our bylaws allows church members to introduce new business from the floor. There cannot be a vote on anything today. The congregation needs time to consider and measure any measure or proposal, but you can bring up new business. So is there any new business anybody would like to bring up at this time? Excellent. We will. Nancy, go ahead.
One thing, it's not exactly business.
Yeah, go ahead. Can we use the yellow mic, please?
You can go right up there. Oh, okay. I think it's on. Hello? Oh, it is on. Okay. So as Jim mentioned, I was on the CAP campaign with him and Sue, and I have to say this because I don't know if any of us will be around for the next capital campaign, but I just wanted to get out there somewhere. We discovered after we had already started the CAP campaign that we could have applied to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which does give matching funds to historic churches to keep up their buildings. But you have to do it. You have to apply before your CAP campaign starts. So unfortunately, we missed out on a lot of money that we could have had because we would have met all of the other criteria that I read about on their website. So just, you know, there's always something that you learn when you do something like this. And most of us have not, well, some of us have not, you know, been in CAP campaigns before, and hopefully we won't for a long time, but I just want to let somebody know that that's a thing that we could have done, okay? Yeah, and thanks again to Jim for leading us on that.
Thank you, Nancy. We've noted that. I wrote it down, so we have it there for future note. Any other new business anybody wants to bring to the floor? Excellent. So let's have a round of applause and gratitude for the work of the nominating committee once again. And the outgoing leaders who have completed their terms of service, let's thank them with a round of applause as well. And we thank our new leaders for stepping us to lead us in the future of this church. And Rev Matthew, we have benediction on here. Would you like to give a benediction, or shall I just close out the meeting? Yes. Yes, and thank you so much, Jim, for putting a comprehensive presentation together and keeping track of all of our funding throughout this long process. Thank you so much.
I mean, and And I just want to say thank you. I mean, I don't know how many of my ministerial colleagues would be very jealous to have shown up like with a capital campaign project like almost entirely like already underway and to be starting, and I'm incredibly grateful for that and so excited. And yet, there's still other things to do. So just a reminder, again, we're having a services or prayer day next Sunday after church. So, you know, there's various things that need some tidying or cleaning. You may note, if you look behind you, for instance, these lights underneath the balcony are different colored. And the ones that are way too bright are LEDs, and the ones that are not are energy hogs. So we're going to be replacing all of those, amongst many other things like tidying up around. So we hope to see you there. But I'm here to say benediction words. And you've been here long enough. So, let us express our gratitude for all of those who have stewarded this congregation throughout the years, those who came before us, some names we know and many we don't, who help support and sustain this church so that it might be here for us. Thank you to the people who have been here for many years and want to make sure that what you have received over those years continues for those who come after. Thank you for those who have done and are doing good work right now, some who are just starting in their leadership, some who are continuing, for continuing to shepherd and steward this congregation so that its ministry of making love visible in our lives, in our community, out in the wider world, may continue to go strong and be there for future generations. Amen, and blessed be.